Jesus has often coined short sayings or proverbs that shed light on specific situations. And here, Jesus, in this particular scripture, is fending off the Pharisees' criticism of his disciples for them not following their pre-meal hand washing. Implied in this is a broader criticism by the Pharisees against Jesus for not observing their rules for what one could and could not do on the Sabbath, and for hanging around with those they viewed as unclean or undesirable. Now I want to stop here and make a point. It isn't that in the observing of the rituals themselves that makes anyone any more of a hypocrite than it makes one a saint. The spirit of these outward Jewish rituals were supposed to keep the inward heart focused on the heart of the Torah. The goal was to keep each person mindful of their duty to God and their duty to their neighbor while going about their daily life. And so the rituals were a stop in the day that was like a prayer time to keep the person focused on God and neighbor. But Jesus knew that even the best intentions can easily become corrupted. They can easily become substitutes for real devotion to God, while our hearts are filled with thoughts that inflate our own egos while cutting others down to size. In Mark 7, chapter 6, Jesus, quoting Isaiah, says, "We can honor God with our lips while our hearts are far from God." Jesus points out in Mark, harmful words express evil intentions that lead to harmful deeds, and they come from the heart. You see, for Jesus' listeners, the heart was not just a faculty that was separate from the mind, but it was the center of the emotions, the intelligence, the will, and of our spiritual life. Our words come from our hearts and often head straight for the heart of another. If the heart is poisoned, well, it has great potential to defile ourselves and those around us. When my kids were growing up, they got into the usual fights, especially when they were the age of all these kids that were here, early elementary and mid-elementary, and they hurled the usual verbal garbage at each other. I remember trying all sorts of techniques to get them to stop calling names to each other. And one time, when I was so exasperated and they refused to stop, I finally came up with one solution. I put duct tape over each one of their mouths, and on one it said, "I am mean," and on the other it said, "I am too." And I set them on chairs in our dining room, which the hardback chairs, no anything else to do, looking knee to knee with each other, with the tape over their mouths, looking at each other. And I said, "Okay, now you're going to sit there in silence for 15 minutes and contemplate." And it must have been about 90 seconds before I heard, coming from the tape, little giggling going on. And they made up friends again. But those words that they hurl at each other, and perhaps you remember the words that your brothers or sisters hurled at you that still sting. I know I do. And I remember as a child going to church with my grandmother when we used to come to see her on our annual visits. And while we were at her house, they were very devout Methodists. And we strictly observed the Sabbath. There was no playing of games or no work on Sunday. We would go to church in the morning and then come home for dinner at noon. My grandma and my Aunt Margie would spend the next 5 hours gossiping about the folks in the church. did you see that wig she was wearing? What could she possibly have been thinking? And doesn't Reverend Brown ever push those glasses up? They slide. They're always sliding right off his nose and his shoes. Doesn't he know he should polish them before worship? Then we'd all bundle in the car and go back to church for Sunday evening meeting. Even at 5 years old, I had this vague notion that something was terribly wrong with that picture. And so it still goes. We come to church, we spend an hour praying and singing, and then the minute we leave, gossip and other unkind words come out of our mouth. Words from our hearts come out of our mouths that are aimed straight at the heart of another, whether we realize it or not. No one can achieve purity of heart and speech without the help of God, though. The habits of judgmental gossip and subtle self-promotion are hard to break. The pure in heart are those who consistently allow God's light to shine in their hearts, to show them who they are. The book of James advises that we take a look in the mirror and remember that we're all children of God. So this week I challenge, try speaking and listening for healing, wholesome words. I tried it this week, and I overheard a young father say to his toddler in the grocery store checkout line, "I love you. I'm so glad I get to be your dad," he said as he tousled the toddler's hair. And the little boy just beamed. And a little of the pain of the hurtful words I've spoken as a parent and those I've heard other people speak slipped away. And those words helped me. I felt refreshed and for some reason a bit hopeful. Well, also this week someone posted the following picture on Facebook, which wisely advises how to practice speaking with a clean heart. And I liked it so much I printed it out to hang in my office and on my mirror in the morning. And I made each one of you, as you noticed probably, a copy as well. Before speaking, think. And think stands for, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And remember, through disciplining ourselves to speak in this way, we encourage those around us to be better people as well. Gossip is something that is never intended to help others. It makes the speaker feel more righteous by drawing attention to the perceived flaws of others. Those who speak in this way and those who encourage such talk by listening to it are defiling their own hearts and the hearts of those around them. Think. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? It is said that commisery loves company. We humans often try to build relationships and friendships by tearing down a common foe. We see it in our politics for sure right now. But if something is worth saying, it needs to be said directly to the person in question. No one else has the power to change a given situation but the person doing the action. And the excuse that I was just letting him or her vent or just letting them blow off steam without encouraging the person to go directly to the one involved, as the Bible tells us we need to do, only creates an atmosphere of sin and distrust in the speaker, in the listener, and in the target of the gossip. And everyone comes away defiled. Near the end of As Good as It Gets, Marvin Udall says to Carol, the waitress, I might be the only person on the face of the earth that knows you are the greatest woman on earth. I might be the only one who appreciates how amazing you are in every single thing you do, in every single thought you have, and how you say what you mean, and how you almost always mean something that's all about being straight and good. I think most people miss that about you. And I watch them wondering how they can watch you bring their food and clear their tables and never get that they just met the greatest woman alive. And that fact, that I get it, makes me feel good about me. As we actively work on our own relationship with God and with others, we encourage those around us to do the same. There's nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile, Jesus says in Mark. Most of us get heart checkups and start watching what goes into our mouths. Jesus recommends that we check out our heart and start watching what comes out. And all God's people said.
Every generous act of